Section 1. Ethan Parker didn't believe in love. He had seen too many people destroy themselves for it. His father, his colleagues, even his closest friends. Love, in his eyes, was nothing more than a liability, a distraction from success. And success was all that mattered to him. Sitting in his high-rise Manhattan office, Ethan gazed out at the skyline, his fingers drumming against the polished mahogany desk. His assistant, Nathan, stood nervously across from him, shifting from foot to foot. "So, let me get this straight," Ethan said, his voice as smooth as ever but carrying an edge of irritation. "The investors are backing out because I'm single?" Nathan adjusted his glasses and cleared his throat. "Not exactly, sir. The Lockwood deal hinges on family values. Mr. Lockwood himself is a very traditional man, and he believes a stable family life is a sign of responsibility and commitment. He's not comfortable investing in someone who," he hesitated, choosing his words carefully, "who doesn't appear to have long-term stability." Ethan sighed, running a hand through his dark hair. This was ridiculous. He had built an empire from the ground up. He had turned Parker Enterprises into a billion-dollar conglomerate, and yet all of that meant nothing because he didn't have a woman on his arm. Nathan glanced at his watch before adding, "Mr. Lockwood is finalizing decisions in 2 weeks. If we want to secure this deal, we need a solution now." Ethan leaned back in his chair, exhaling slowly. "So what do you suggest? That I magically find a fiancé in the next 2 weeks?" Nathan hesitated before saying, "Actually, yes." Ethan shot him a sharp look. "What?" Nathan gulped. "A temporary arrangement, a fake engagement, just for the next few months until the deal is sealed." Ethan scoffed. "That's insane." But was it? He rubbed his jaw, considering the possibility. A fake engagement. A woman by his side, just long enough to satisfy Lockwood and the board. No emotional attachments, no real obligations, just a contract. It could work. "We'd need someone trustworthy," Nathan continued. "Someone who understands discretion, someone who won't get any ideas," Ethan finished for him. Nathan nodded. Ethan smirked. "And where exactly do you propose we find this ideal candidate? There aren't exactly ads for fake fiancés." Nathan shifted awkwardly. "Actually, I might know someone." Ethan raised an eyebrow. "Who?" Across the city, in a small art studio that smelled of oil paint and coffee, Lily Harper sat on the floor, her fingers smudged with charcoal as she stared at an unfinished canvas. Bills were piled high on her table. A half-eaten sandwich sat forgotten on her desk, and her landlord had left yet another warning notice under her door that morning. She was drowning. For years, Lily had dreamed of making it big in the art world, but dreaming and surviving were two very different things. She had taken commissions, waitressed, even worked at a bookstore, but nothing seemed to be enough. And now she was weeks away from being evicted. She needed money, fast. Her best friend April lay sprawled on the couch, flipping through a magazine. "You know," she said lazily, "you could always sell your soul to a billionaire." Lily snorted. "Right, because billionaires are just throwing money at struggling artists." April smirked. "Not exactly, but there are rich guys out there who need unconventional help. Fake relationships, fake engagements, that sort of thing." Lily scoffed, but April continued, "I'm serious. I met this guy at work, Nathan. He's looking for someone to play fiancé to his boss. Pays well." Lily frowned. "Wait, you're saying I should pretend to be some billionaire's fiancé? That's insane." April shrugged. "So is getting kicked out of your apartment." Lily sighed, rubbing her temples. It was ridiculous, it was crazy, but so was the pile of overdue bills on her table. She exhaled deeply. "Fine, I'll meet him just to hear what he has to say." 2 days later, Lily found herself sitting across from Ethan Parker in a sleek, modern restaurant, feeling completely out of place. The man was infuriatingly handsome, tall, broad-shouldered, with piercing blue eyes that could freeze anyone in their tracks. He exuded power, confidence, and an air of superiority that made her want to roll her eyes. "So," Ethan said, his tone unreadable, "Nathan tells me you're interested." Lily lifted her chin. "I'm interested in hearing what you're offering." Ethan smirked. "Smart." He leaned forward, his fingers tapping the table lightly. "Here's the deal. I need a fiancé. You need money. We sign a contract. 3 months. Public appearances, social events, no personal entanglements. You'll be well compensated." Lily crossed her arms. "How well?" $200,000. She nearly choked on her water. He continued, 100,000 up front. The rest after the contract ends. I'll cover any expenses while we're engaged. Lily blinked. 200,000. That was life-changing money. It could clear her debts, pay off her rent, give her time to focus on her art. But what's the catch? She asked suspiciously. Ethan smirked. No catch. Just keep up appearances and follow the rules. Lily arched an eyebrow. Rules? Ethan slid a contract toward her. You'll see for yourself. She skimmed through it. No public scandals, no relationships outside of their engagement, no telling anyone the truth, and most importantly, no falling in love. Lily let out a small laugh. You really put that in writing? Ethan's expression turned serious. I don't do emotions. Lily studied him for a moment. He was unreadable, detached. This was just business to him, and maybe that was a good thing. She took a deep breath. All right, she said, reaching for a pen. I'll do it. Ethan watched as she signed the contract, his sharp blue eyes flickering with something she couldn't quite place. Welcome to the role of your life, he murmured. And just like that, the deal was sealed. That evening, as Lily lay in bed staring at the ceiling, reality began to sink in. She had just agreed to pretend to be a billionaire's fiancée for 3 months. She was stepping into a world that wasn't hers, playing a role that wasn't real, but she would make it work. She had to. Meanwhile, in his penthouse, Ethan poured himself a glass of whiskey, staring at the engagement contract in his hands. She was different. She wasn't the type of woman he usually associated with. There was no greed in her eyes, no desperation to latch onto his wealth. She had signed the contract without hesitation, without the usual questions about what came after. She was in it for the money, and he was in it for the deal. Nothing more. At least that's what he told himself. Because Ethan Parker never expected a woman like Lily Harper to shake the carefully constructed world he had built for himself. And he had no idea that, fake or not, this engagement would change everything. Section 2. The moment Lily stepped into Ethan Parker's world, she realized just how much she had underestimated what she had signed up for. On the outside, their agreement seemed simple. Show up at a few events, wear a fancy dress, smile at the cameras, and play the devoted fiancé of one of the most powerful men in New York. But in reality, it was far more complicated than she had imagined. Her first official appearance as Ethan's fiancé was scheduled for the following evening at an elite charity gala. And it wasn't just any gala. It was being hosted by the Lockwood family, the very people Ethan was trying to secure the business deal with. Lily had spent the morning receiving texts from Nathan, Ethan's assistant, listing every single thing she needed to know before attending the event. Details about the Lockwood family, the guests who would be in attendance, even a list of potential questions she might be asked. She had never studied this much for anything in her life. By the afternoon, she was ushered into an upscale boutique where a team of stylists awaited her. This is completely unnecessary, Lily grumbled, as a tall, elegant woman measured her for a custom gown. Mr. Parker wants you to look the part, Nathan explained, scrolling through his tablet. You'll be attending high-profile events and everything, from your dress to your jewelry, must be impeccable. Lily sighed. She had expected this, but that didn't mean she was comfortable with it. Growing up, she had never been the kind of girl who wore designer gowns or had people fawn over her. She was more at home in paint-stained jeans and oversized sweaters, working on her art with music blasting in the background. But this was an entirely different world. As the stylists worked on her, shaping her hair into an elegant updo and applying flawless makeup, Lily stared at her reflection in the mirror. She barely recognized herself. The woman looking back at her had the appearance of someone who belonged in Ethan Parker's world, poised, polished, breathtaking. But deep down, she knew she didn't. She wasn't some billionaire's glamorous fiancée. She was just a woman pretending to be. By the time evening arrived, Lily was more nervous than she had ever been in her life. She stood in front of Ethan's penthouse, clutching the small diamond clutch that had been given to her. The black silk gown she wore hugged her body perfectly, elegant, yet sophisticated. But despite the flawless exterior, her heart was hammering in her chest. What if she messed up? What if someone saw through her? Before she could second-guess herself, the door opened and Ethan stepped out. For a moment, Lily forgot how to breathe. Ethan Parker was already devastatingly handsome in a business suit, but in a black tuxedo, He was utterly lethal. His tall frame was wrapped in tailored perfection, his jet-black hair was neatly styled, and his piercing blue eyes scanned her from head to toe. She expected some kind of smug remark, some cold, calculated words about how she had to play her role perfectly tonight. Instead, he said nothing, just one sharp, unreadable glance followed by a flicker of something in his eyes that she couldn't quite place. And then he extended his arm. "Shall we?" Lily hesitated for only a second before slipping her hand into the crook of his arm. The moment they stepped into the limousine waiting downstairs, the weight of the night ahead settled on her shoulders. This was it, her first test as Ethan Parker's fake fiancée. The gala was held at an extravagant hotel, the kind of place where gold-trimmed chandeliers hung from the ceiling, and waiters moved seamlessly through the crowd with trays of champagne. Lily barely had time to take it all in before they were surrounded. "Ethan, there you are," a booming voice called out. A tall, gray-haired man in an expensive navy suit strode toward them, his wife at his side. Lily immediately recognized him as Charles Lockwood, the investor Ethan was trying to impress. Ethan greeted him with a firm handshake, his usual composed demeanor never faltering. "And this must be your lovely fiancée." Charles turned to Lily, his sharp eyes scanning her with curiosity. Lily forced a smile, keeping her posture elegant. "It's a pleasure to meet you, Mr. Lockwood." He nodded approvingly. "Beautiful and well-spoken. You certainly know how to pick them, Parker." Ethan smirked. "I like to think so." Lily resisted the urge to roll her eyes at the comment. For the next hour, she played her role perfectly. She smiled. She laughed at the appropriate moments, and she answered every question with ease. No one suspected a thing. And Ethan? He was flawless, and he played the role of the devoted fiancé so effortlessly, brushing his fingers against her lower back as he guided her through the crowd, leaning in just enough when he spoke to her so that it looked intimate. It was an act. She knew it was an act, but every time he touched her, every time his hand lingered on hers for just a second too long, she felt something entirely unexpected, something dangerously close to real. It wasn't until she excused herself to go to the restroom that things took an unexpected turn. Lily stepped into the hallway, taking a deep breath. The night was going well, better than she had expected, but she still felt the tension in her muscles, the exhaustion of pretending. Just as she was about to return, a voice stopped her. "I know who you are." She turned sharply, her stomach twisting. Standing a few feet away was a woman with dark red lipstick and an expensive emerald dress. Bianca Sterling. Lily didn't know her personally, but she had read about her. A socialite, heiress to a massive shipping empire, and more importantly, Ethan Parker's ex. Lily kept her expression neutral. "I'm sorry, have we met?" Bianca smirked, tilting her head slightly. "No, but I know enough. You're not his fiancée." Lily's stomach clenched. Bianca took a step closer. "I don't know where he found you, but let me give you a little warning. Ethan doesn't do relationships. He doesn't fall in love, and whatever little arrangement you have with him, it won't last." Lily forced herself to stay calm. She had known from the beginning that this wasn't real, that she was just a placeholder, but somehow hearing it from someone else made it feel different, like a punch to the gut. "Thanks for the advice," Lily said coolly, brushing past her. But Bianca wasn't done. "Just remember," she said, her voice sharp, "you're just another temporary thing in his life, nothing more." Lily didn't respond. She couldn't, because deep down she knew it was true. She was just playing a role. But the real question was, why did it suddenly feel like more? Section 3. Lily returned to the gala with her head held high, but her mind was still reeling from Bianca Sterling's words. She knew this arrangement wasn't real. She knew Ethan Parker wasn't the type of man to fall in love, much less with a woman he had hired to play pretend. But the way Bianca had said it, the confidence in her tone, it made Lily wonder just how many women had come before her, and how many had been left behind. Still, she couldn't afford to dwell on it. The moment she stepped back into the ballroom, Ethan's gaze snapped to hers. His expression was unreadable, but there was a sharpness in his blue eyes, as if he had sensed something was wrong. She quickly forced a smile, slipping back into her role as his devoted fiancé. But for the first time that night, the act felt heavier than before. The gala dragged on for another hour, before Ethan finally decided they had done enough socializing. He excused them politely, leading Lily out of the ballroom and into the waiting limousine. The silence between them was thick as the car pulled away from the hotel. Ethan had been watching her all night, studying her every move. He had noticed the slight hesitation in her smiles, the way her mind seemed elsewhere. Finally, he spoke. "What happened?" Lily blinked, turning to him. "What? You left for 10 minutes and came back looking like someone had just walked over your grave." She let out a small laugh. "You're imagining things." Ethan narrowed his eyes, clearly not convinced. Lily sighed, turning to look out the window. "It's nothing, just ran into someone who felt the need to give me some unsolicited advice." Ethan didn't respond right away. "Who?" She hesitated. "Bianca Sterling." A muscle in his jaw ticked. Lily knew she had hit a nerve. Ethan leaned back against the leather seat, exhaling sharply. "What did she say?" Lily shrugged. "The usual, that you don't do relationships, that whatever this is won't last." His eyes darkened. "And you believed her?" Lily turned to face him fully, something sharp tugging at her chest. "Shouldn't I?" Ethan didn't answer, because they both knew the truth, and this wasn't real, this was a transaction. And yet, as he sat there, his gaze locked onto hers, there was something different in his eyes. Something raw, something he wasn't ready to admit. The days that followed were a blur of high-profile events, business dinners, and carefully staged public outings. Ethan's deal with Lockwood Enterprises was progressing smoothly, and their engagement was all anyone could talk about. But something between them had shifted. It was subtle at first. The way Ethan's touch lingered just a second too long. The way he watched her when he thought she wasn't looking. The way his hand rested on the small of her back, his fingers pressing just enough to make her heart race. Lily told herself it was all part of the act, but deep down she wasn't so sure anymore. One evening they attended an exclusive charity auction. Lily had gotten used to the routine by now. Smile, nod, play the part. But tonight, there was an added layer of tension. Ethan had barely taken his eyes off her, and neither had half the men in the room. Lily wasn't oblivious. She had spent her entire life blending into the background, but tonight, in a deep red silk gown that hugged her curves in all the right places, she stood out, and people noticed, including Ethan. Throughout the evening, she could feel the weight of his gaze, heavy and possessive. But it wasn't until she excused herself to get a drink that things took an unexpected turn. "Ms. Bennett, isn't it?" Lily turned, coming face to face with a man in his late 40s. He had a charming smile, but there was something about him that made her uneasy. "Yes," she said politely. "I don't believe we've been introduced," he said, extending a hand. "Graham Kensington." Lily knew the name, a notorious investor, known for both his wealth and his less than honorable reputation with women. She hesitated before shaking his hand. "I must say," he continued, his gaze sweeping over her, "Ethan Parker certainly has good taste." Lily forced a tight smile. "That's kind of you to say." "You know," Graham mused, swirling the whiskey in his glass, "men like Parker don't usually settle down. They get bored easily. But I have to admit, you're quite the exception." Lily's stomach twisted. Before she could respond, another voice cut in. "I don't recall inviting you into our conversation, Kensington." Lily turned just as Ethan stepped beside her. His expression was calm, but there was an unmistakable warning in his tone. Graham chuckled. "Ah, Parker, just making small talk with your lovely fiancée." Ethan's jaw clenched. "She's not interested." For a moment, the tension between the two men was palpable. Then Graham smirked, raising his hands in mock surrender. "Relax, no harm done." With one last glance at Lily, he turned and walked away. Ethan exhaled sharply, his fingers brushing against hers. "Are you okay?" Lily nodded, though her heart was still racing. "Yeah, just not a fan of men like that." Ethan's gaze softened. Without thinking, he reached for her hand, intertwining their fingers. It was the most natural thing in the world. Lily froze, looking up at him. She expected him to let go, to step back, but he didn't. Instead, he brought her hand to his lips, pressing the faintest kiss against her knuckles. Her breath caught. "Come on," he murmured, leading her back toward the ballroom. And just like that, the line between real and pretend blurred even more. That night, back at Ethan's penthouse, Lily couldn't shake the feeling that something had changed between them. She had been hired to play a role, but it didn't feel like a role anymore. Not when Ethan looked at her like that, not when his touch sent shivers down her spine, not when she found herself craving his presence more than she should. She was getting too close, too comfortable, and that was dangerous because in the end, this wasn't real. It never would be, and if she wasn't careful, She was going to end up with a broken heart. Section 4. Lily knew she had to set boundaries. Whatever was happening between her and Ethan, it wasn't real. It couldn't be. The contract was still in place, the arrangement still standing, and yet, every time he looked at her, every time his hand found hers without a second thought, she felt something shift inside her. She had seen the way Ethan handled business, calculated, ruthless, always in control. But when it came to her, there was something different, something that made her wonder if maybe, just maybe, this wasn't just an act for him either. But she couldn't let herself believe that, not when her past had taught her that love was just another illusion. Ethan's schedule was relentless. Meetings, negotiations, press conferences. His life was built around power and reputation. But despite everything on his plate, he always made time for Lily. He took her to dinners in the city's most exclusive restaurants, held her hand at events like it was second nature, whispered inside jokes in her ear just to make her smile, and the more time she spent with him, the harder it became to pretend. Because this didn't feel fake anymore, it felt real, and that terrified her. One evening, Ethan had a high-stakes dinner with the Lockwood investors. Lily had prepared herself for another night of playing the part, but something about tonight felt different. Ethan had sent a dress to her room, a breathtaking black gown, custom-fitted with intricate lace detailing that made her feel like she belonged in a fairy tale. She hesitated before putting it on, but when she stepped out of the bedroom, Ethan's reaction made her forget how to breathe. For the first time since they started this arrangement, he looked speechless. His eyes traced every inch of her, his lips parting slightly before he cleared his throat. "You look," he exhaled, shaking his head as if searching for the right words. "Perfect." Lily's heart pounded. It was a simple compliment, but the way he said it, the way his voice dropped just slightly, sent a shiver down her spine. She forced a light laugh. "You act like I don't dress up every other night for these events." Ethan stepped closer, his fingers brushing against her arm as he adjusted a loose strand of her hair. "Not like this," he murmured. Lily swallowed hard. She needed to get out of this moment before it swallowed her whole. "We should go," she said quickly, stepping back. Ethan's gaze lingered on her for a second longer before he nodded. "Let's go." The dinner was a success. Ethan, as always, was a master of negotiation. Smooth, charming, effortlessly in control. Lily played her part flawlessly, offering the occasional comment, keeping the investors engaged. But the entire time she felt Ethan's eyes on her, like he was watching her, studying her, trying to understand something even he didn't quite grasp. And then, near the end of the night, one of the investors, an older man named Vincent Sinclair, smirked over his glass of whiskey. "You know, Parker," he mused, "I've been in this industry long enough to know when a man is truly in love, and you," he motioned between Ethan and Lily, "you're a lost cause." Lily's breath caught in her throat. Ethan let out a small chuckle, shaking his head. "What makes you say that?" Vincent shrugged. "It's the way you look at her, like she's the only thing in the room that matters." Lily's pulse skyrocketed. The words were meant as casual conversation, but the weight of them felt crushing, because when she glanced at Ethan, his expression had shifted, like he had just realized something he wasn't ready to admit. The car ride home was silent. Lily couldn't stop replaying Vincent's words in her head. She wanted to laugh it off, to dismiss it as nothing, but the way Ethan had reacted, she knew he felt something, and that was dangerous. When they arrived at the penthouse, she expected Ethan to retreat to his study like he usually did, but instead, he turned to her. "Lily," she stilled, "I need to ask you something." Her heart pounded. "Okay." Ethan exhaled, running a hand through his hair. "When this started," he said carefully, "it was just business." Lily nodded, staying silent. But somewhere along the way, it stopped feeling like that. A lump formed in her throat. "This isn't real, Ethan," she whispered, forcing herself to say it before it was too late. It never was. Ethan's jaw tightened. "So all of this," he motioned between them, "has been nothing to you?" Lily hesitated. She wanted to say yes. She wanted to tell him this was just a job, just a contract, just a means to an end. But she couldn't, because it was a lie, and they both knew it. Ethan stepped closer, his gaze burning into hers. "I don't think it's fake," he said quietly. Lily sucked in a sharp breath. "I think you feel it too," he continued, voice lower now. Her entire body was trembling. She needed to run. She needed to put an end to this before it completely consumed her. But when Ethan reached up, brushing his fingers against her cheek, she didn't pull away. She couldn't. Lily didn't know how it happened. One second they were standing inches apart. The next, Ethan's lips were on hers. And just like that, the walls she had so carefully built around herself shattered. She melted into him, her hands gripping his shirt as he deepened the kiss, his arms wrapping around her waist like he never wanted to let go. It was reckless and it was dangerous. But in that moment, none of it mattered. Because for the first time since this arrangement started, there was no contract. No deal, no pretending. There was only them. And Lily knew this was the moment she was going to regret the most. Section 5. Lily didn't sleep that night. She lay in bed staring at the ceiling, replaying every moment over and over. Ethan had kissed her, and she had kissed him back. That was the problem. She wasn't supposed to. She wasn't supposed to let herself feel anything. But now, it was impossible to ignore. The contract was still in place, the arrangement still stood. But something had changed between them. Something irreversible. And if she wasn't careful, she was going to lose herself in it. The next morning, Lily did everything she could to pretend nothing had happened. She got up, showered, dressed, and made herself a cup of coffee like it was just another day. But when she walked into the living room, Ethan was already there, leaning against the kitchen counter, watching her. The tension was unbearable. Neither of them spoke. Finally, Lily broke the silence. "I think we should talk." Ethan's expression didn't change. "Okay," he said. "Let's talk." Lily took a deep breath, gripping her mug a little tighter. "Last night was a mistake." His jaw clenched. "You don't believe that." She forced a small laugh, shaking her head. "Of course I do. This is all fake, Ethan. We agreed on that from the beginning." Ethan exhaled, running a hand through his hair. "You keep saying that," he muttered, "but it doesn't feel fake." Lily swallowed hard. "You're my fiancée," he continued. "At least that's what everyone believes. We go to events together. We live together. We share everything. But the only thing that makes this fake is the fact that we signed a contract." She didn't respond. "Lily," he said softly, stepping closer, "if you can look me in the eye and tell me you feel nothing, I'll drop it." Her chest tightened, because she couldn't. She couldn't lie to him, not about this, but she had to, for both of their sakes. So she straightened her spine, met his gaze, and forced the words out. "I feel nothing." The air between them shifted. Ethan's expression darkened for a split second like she had just knocked the wind out of him, but then he nodded, stepping back. "All right," he said, his voice eerily calm. "If that's how you feel." Lily turned away before he could see the pain in her eyes, because every word she had just spoken was a lie. The next few days were unbearable. Ethan kept his distance and Lily let him. They still attended events together, still put on the perfect act for the public, but the warmth that had once been between them was gone. He didn't joke with her anymore, didn't tease her, didn't look at her the way he used to, and it was killing her. But this was for the best, and it had to be. One evening, Ethan had a business gala to attend. Lily had considered backing out, making up an excuse, avoiding him entirely, but she knew that wasn't an option. So she put on the gown he had sent, did her hair and makeup, and met him downstairs. Ethan barely looked at her. The car ride was silent. By the time they arrived at the event, she was certain things between them would never be the same again. And maybe that was a good thing. But then, as they stepped into the grand ballroom, she spotted her. Vanessa, Ethan's ex, the woman who had shattered his trust, the reason he had stopped believing in love in the first place. Lily had only ever heard about her in passing. Ethan never spoke about her, but she had seen the headlines, the scandal, the betrayal. And now here she was, standing across the room, staring right at Ethan like she had every right to. Lily's stomach twisted. She shouldn't care, she shouldn't feel anything. But when Vanessa smiled and started walking toward them, Lily's pulse spiked. She didn't want to see this, she didn't want to watch, but she had no choice. Vanessa was stunning. Tall, blonde, effortlessly elegant, the kind of woman who had always belonged in Ethan's world. She greeted him with a warm smile, her voice soft and smooth. "Ethan," she said, tilting her head. "It's been a long time." Ethan's jaw tightened. "Not long enough." Vanessa let out a soft laugh. "Still holding grudges?" Lily felt Ethan's grip on her waist tighten, but he didn't say anything. Vanessa's gaze shifted to her, and Lily could see the calculation in her eyes. "And this must be the famous fiancé," she said. her lips curving into a smile. "Lily, right?" Lily nodded, forcing a polite smile. "That's me." Vanessa studied her for a moment, then looked back at Ethan. "You always did have a thing for beautiful women," she murmured, her voice dripping with something Lily didn't like. Ethan's expression didn't change, but Lily could feel it, the tension, the anger simmering beneath the surface. And for the first time since she met him, she saw it, the way Vanessa still had power over him, the way she could get under his skin without even trying. And Lily hated it. The rest of the night was a blur. Lily kept a smile on her face, played the role of the perfect fiancée, but her mind was elsewhere. Every time Vanessa looked at Ethan, every time she laughed a little too sweetly, every time she touched his arm just a little too casually, Lily felt it. The jealousy, the insecurity, the realization that maybe she wasn't the only one struggling to keep her emotions in check. By the time the event ended, she was exhausted. She just wanted to go home, to pretend none of this had happened. But when she stepped outside with Ethan, she stopped short. Vanessa was there, waiting. Ethan sighed, rubbing his temple. "Vanessa, relax," she interrupted, holding up her hands. "I just want to talk." Ethan hesitated, then turned to Lily. "I'll meet you in the car," he said. Lily's heart clenched, but she nodded. And as she walked away, she realized something. This wasn't fake anymore, not for her, not for him. And if she wasn't careful, she was going to get hurt. Section 6. Lily sat in the back of the car, her fingers digging into the fabric of her dress as she stared out the window. She had told herself she wouldn't care, that none of this mattered. But watching Ethan stay behind with Vanessa had cracked something inside her. She had no right to feel like this, but that didn't change the fact that she did. The driver glanced at her through the rearview mirror. "Mr. Parker said he'll be out soon, ma'am. Should I wait here?" Lily swallowed hard, forcing her expression into something neutral. "Yes," she murmured. "We'll wait." But as the minutes ticked by, her patience started to unravel. What was taking so long? What could they possibly be talking about? Her mind filled with possibilities, each one worse than the last. She imagined Vanessa flashing that perfect smile, placing a hand on Ethan's arm, whispering something meant only for him. She imagined Ethan hesitating, imagined him remembering. What if she still had a hold on him? What if, despite everything, Ethan still saw Vanessa as the woman he had once loved? Lily clenched her fists. She wasn't going to sit here and wait like some obedient little pawn in his life. She had to know. Before she could talk herself out of it, she opened the door and stepped outside. The cool night air hit her skin, but she barely felt it as she walked toward the corner of the building where she had last seen them. Her heart pounded as she got closer, and then she stopped. Because there they were, Vanessa was standing too close. Ethan's expression was unreadable, and then Vanessa said something that made Lily's blood run cold. "You can drop the act, Ethan. We both know you don't actually love her." Lily's breath hitched. She should leave, and she should walk away before she heard something she couldn't unhear. But she couldn't move. She stood frozen, waiting for his response. Ethan's jaw tightened. "You don't know anything about me," he said coldly. Vanessa let out a soft laugh. "I know you better than anyone, and I know when you're pretending." She tilted her head, her voice lowering. "You and I were meant to be together. We both know that." Lily felt her heart twist. She didn't want to hear this, but she couldn't leave. Not yet. Ethan took a slow breath, his expression dark. "That was a long time ago, Vanessa. So, we can fix things, we can go back." "There's no going back." His voice was firm. Vanessa blinked. "Ethan, I don't love you," he said, his voice sharper this time. "I never did." Lily's heart skipped. For a second, even Vanessa looked caught off guard. Then she let out a small, bitter laugh. "Oh, I see," she murmured. "You actually think you love her." Ethan didn't hesitate. "I do." Lily's breath caught in her throat. She had to be imagining this. There was no way Ethan had just said those words. Vanessa scoffed. "You're lying." Ethan's expression darkened. "I used to think I wasn't capable of love," he said. "That I was too broken, too focused on my career, that nothing else mattered." He let out a slow exhale, shaking his head. "But then Lily walked into my life, and everything changed." Lily's pulse raced. She couldn't believe what she was hearing. Vanessa took a step back, her face twisting in anger. "She's nothing," she hissed. Ethan's expression hardened. "She's everything." Lily's heart pounded so loudly she was sure they could hear it. She didn't wait to hear anything else. She turned and walked away, her head spinning. She had to get out of here before Ethan saw her, before she did something stupid, and before she let herself believe that any of this was real. Ethan got into the car a few minutes later. Lily kept her gaze on the window, pretending she hadn't heard a word of what had happened. She expected him to bring it up, but he didn't. He just sat there in silence, his hands folded in his lap, staring at her like he wanted to say something but didn't know how. And that was worse, because if he had said it out loud, she could have denied it. But now the words hung in the air between them, too real to ignore. Finally, Ethan spoke. "Did you have fun tonight?" Lily let out a small, humorless laugh. "What do you think?" Ethan sighed, running a hand through his hair. "I know you saw us." Lily's fingers tightened around the fabric of her dress. She forced a small shrug. "So what?" "So," he said, his voice softer now, "I want to know what you're thinking." She turned to him, meeting his gaze for the first time. "What difference does it make?" His expression darkened. "It makes all the difference." Lily let out a shaky breath. This was dangerous territory. She needed to change the subject. She needed to remind both of them what this actually was. "I think we should stick to the contract," she said. Ethan's eyes flashed. "That's what you want?" She hesitated for half a second too long. Then she nodded. "Yes." A muscle ticked in his jaw. "All right," he said finally, his voice cool. "If that's what you want." He turned away, looking out the window, his entire body tense. Lily clenched her fists. She had made the right choice. She had to keep reminding herself of that, because no matter how much she wanted to believe him, wanted to believe this could be real, she knew better. Ethan Parker was a billionaire, a man who could have anything he wanted. And she was just a girl he had paid to pretend, nothing more. And if she forgot that, even for a second, she was going to get hurt. Section 7. The tension in the car was suffocating. Lily's heart pounded in her chest as Ethan's words echoed in her head. It makes all the difference. She had told him she wanted to stick to the contract. But was that really what she wanted? Lily clenched her fists. It didn't matter. It had to be what she wanted. Because if she admitted, even for a second, that she wanted more, that she wanted him, it would be a disaster. She needed to keep her distance. She needed to remember that this wasn't real. The ride back to Ethan's penthouse was silent. By the time they arrived, Lily was ready to escape to her room for the night. But as soon as they stepped inside, Ethan spoke. "We need to talk." She froze, her back still turned to him. Talking was dangerous. Talking would only lead to things she wasn't ready to confront. "There's nothing to talk about," she said, forcing herself to sound detached. But Ethan wasn't letting it go. "Yes, there is," he said firmly. Lily turned to him, crossing her arms. "Why? Because of what you told Vanessa." Ethan's jaw tightened. "You heard that?" Lily let out a dry laugh. "Hard not to when you were standing 10 feet away." Ethan took a step closer, his piercing eyes locked onto hers. "Then you know how I feel." Lily's breath caught. She shook her head, retreating a step. I know what you said. That doesn't mean it's real." Ethan let out a sharp exhale, rubbing a hand down his face. "Damn it, Lily, why are you fighting this?" "Because this isn't real," she snapped. "You don't love me, Ethan. You just think you do because of this stupid arrangement. It's a fantasy, a game." "It's not a game to me," Ethan cut in, his voice low, serious. Lily opened her mouth to argue, but no words came out. Ethan took another step toward her. His gaze softened, but there was something raw in his eyes, something she had never seen before. "I didn't expect this," he admitted. "I never planned for this to happen, but I do love you, Lily." Lily's heart clenched. He was wrong. He had to be wrong. Because if he wasn't, it meant she would have to admit that she loved him too. And that was something she could not afford. "Stop it," she whispered, and Ethan frowned. "Stop what?" "Stop saying things like that." Ethan's expression darkened. "Why? Because you don't believe me?" Lily hesitated for a fraction of a second too long. Ethan saw it. His eyes flickered with something unreadable. "You do believe me," he murmured. "You're just scared." Lily let out a hollow laugh, shaking her head. "I'm not scared," she lied. Ethan tilted his head. "Then prove it." Lily swallowed hard. "How?" "Tell me you don't feel the same way," Ethan said. Lily's stomach twisted into knots. This was it. The moment she had to lie. She had to. Because if she told him the truth, if she let him see how much he meant to her, she wouldn't survive it. She forced herself to hold his gaze. And then, "I don't love you." The words cut her like shards of glass. Ethan's entire body went rigid. For a long moment, he just stared at her. Then his jaw clenched. His expression closed off. Lily didn't realize how much she had hated seeing that cold, emotionless mask until he put it back on. "All right," he said, his voice clipped. Lily's stomach twisted. This was what she wanted, right? Ethan turned away, walking toward his bedroom. Lily should have felt relief, but all she felt was an ache so deep it nearly stole her breath. And as he closed the door behind him, she realized the truth. She hadn't just lied to him. She had lied to herself. The next morning, Lily woke up to an empty apartment. She wasn't surprised. After last night, Ethan probably didn't want to be anywhere near her. She told herself that was a good thing, that it was better this way. Then why did she feel so hollow? Lily shook off the feeling and forced herself to get ready for the day. But as she scrolled through her phone, she froze. Because Ethan's name was everywhere, and not in a good way. Her blood ran cold as she clicked on the latest article. Billionaire Ethan Parker's fake engagement exposed. Lily's heart pounded as she read the words. Anonymous sources claim that Ethan Parker's recent engagement to artist Lily Carter was nothing more than a strategic move to secure business deals. Insiders suggest that their relationship is purely contractual, raising questions about the legitimacy of Parker's personal and professional ethics. Lily's vision blurred. Someone had leaked their secret, and now the whole world knew. Her fingers trembled as she clicked on another article, then another, each one worse than the last. Ethan's company was being scrutinized. His investors were panicking. The media was shredding his reputation apart. And Lily? She was being called everything from a gold digger to a con artist. Panic clawed at her chest. This wasn't just bad, this was catastrophic. She needed to find Ethan. She needed to fix this. Lily grabbed her coat and rushed out the door. She didn't know where he was, but she had to find him. Before it was too late. Ethan was in his office, staring at the headlines. His grip on his phone was so tight, his knuckles turned white. Someone had betrayed him. Someone had leaked the truth. And now everything was falling apart. The door to his office burst open. Lily stood there, breathless, her eyes wild with panic. "We have a problem," she said. Ethan let out a humorless laugh. "Yeah," he muttered. "No kidding." Lily took a step closer. "We need to do damage control," she said urgently. "There's nothing to fix, Lily." Lily froze. "What?" Ethan leaned back in his chair, his expression unreadable. "This was bound to happen eventually," he said flatly. "And honestly, maybe it's for the best." Lily's chest tightened. "What are you saying?" Ethan exhaled slowly, running a hand through his hair. "I'm saying maybe it's time we end this." Lily's stomach dropped. "What?" Ethan stood, walking toward her. "This was a business deal, wasn't it?" he said, his voice colder than she had ever heard it. "So, let's call it what it is. A failed one." Lily's throat tightened. "You don't mean that." Ethan met her gaze. "Don't I?" Lily swallowed hard. This was her fault. She had told him she didn't love him. And now he was doing exactly what she had pushed him to do, walking away. But as he reached for the door, something inside her snapped. She couldn't let him leave. Not like this, not without telling him the truth. Before she could talk herself out of it, she grabbed his wrist. "Wait!" Ethan turned back, his expression unreadable. Lily's heart pounded. "I lied," she whispered. Ethan stilled. Lily took a shaky breath. "I love you." Section 8. Ethan didn't move. He didn't speak. He just stared at her. Lily's heart pounded so hard it hurt. "I love you," she repeated, her voice barely above a whisper. The weight of the confession pressed down on her. She had spent so long convincing herself that this wasn't real, that she couldn't love him. But now, standing here, watching him pull away, she couldn't lie anymore. Ethan's jaw clenched. "Don't," he said, his voice rough. Lily's stomach twisted. "Don't what?" she whispered. "Don't do this now," he snapped. His blue eyes burned with something between anger and pain. "You had your chance to tell me the truth. You stood there last night and told me you didn't love me. And now, when everything is falling apart, now you want to take it back?" Lily swallowed hard. "I was scared," she admitted. Ethan let out a sharp laugh, shaking his head. "Scared?" His voice was bitter. "You think I wasn't scared? You think I just woke up one day and wanted to feel this way? Lily opened her mouth to respond, but he wasn't done. I spent my whole life avoiding this, Lily. I built walls. I made damn sure that nothing and no one could touch me. He took a step toward her, his voice lowering. And then you showed up, and you ruined everything. Lily's breath caught. Ruined everything. She knew he didn't mean it the way it sounded, but the words still stung. Ethan exhaled sharply and ran a hand through his hair. But I let it happen. He muttered more to himself than her. I let myself believe that you might actually feel the same way. He shook his head. And then you looked me in the eye and lied. Lily's throat tightened. She had hurt him, and she had hurt him badly. And now he was shutting her out the same way she had shut him out. Desperation clawed at her chest. I do love you, she said again, stepping closer. Ethan, I swear But he held up a hand. Don't. Lily's heart broke. She had never seen Ethan like this before, not once. He looked defeated. I can't do this, Lily. His voice was quiet now. Lily felt the tears prick at the back of her eyes. Ethan, he shook his head. I need to think. Lily's breath hitched. So, what? That's it? She whispered. You're just going to walk away? Ethan's jaw tensed. No, he said after a moment. But I need space. Lily swallowed the lump in her throat. She wanted to fight. She wanted to fix this. But she had no right to demand anything from him now, not after what she had done. So instead, she nodded stiffly and took a step back. Okay. Ethan's shoulders rose and fell with a heavy breath. Then, without another word, he turned and walked away. Lily stood there long after he was gone, staring at the door. She had told him the truth, but it might have been too late. The next morning, Lily woke up to the sound of her phone vibrating on the nightstand. She groggily reached for it, barely registering the caller ID, until she saw the name, Jenna, her best friend. Lily sat up fast and answered. Hello? Lily? Jenna's voice came through, urgent. Have you seen the news? Lily's stomach dropped. Not again. What happened? She asked, already bracing herself for the worst. Jenna hesitated for a second before sighing. It's about Ethan. Lily's pulse spiked. What about him? Another pause, then, he resigned. Lily's world stopped. What? Jenna exhaled. He stepped down as CEO, Lily, effective immediately. Lily's hands shook as she gripped the phone. That didn't make sense. Why would he? And then it hit her. He was walking away from everything, not just her, everything. Lily? Jenna's voice pulled her back. I have to go, she stammered. She hung up before Jenna could respond. Then, without wasting another second, she grabbed her coat and bolted out the door. The office was chaos when Lily arrived. Employees whispered in hushed voices. Phones rang off the hook, and in the middle of it all, Ethan's office door stood open. Lily didn't wait. She stormed inside. Ethan was sitting behind his desk, staring blankly at a document in his hands. When he looked up and saw her, his expression hardened. Lily, are you insane? She burst out, slamming the door shut behind her. Ethan sighed and set the paper down. Lily, No. She cut him off. You don't get to do this. You don't get to throw your entire career away because of me. Ethan's jaw clenched. This isn't about you, he said. Lily let out a dry, humorless laugh. Bullshit. Ethan narrowed his eyes. Lily stormed up to his desk, slamming her hands down on the surface. You love this company, she said fiercely. You built it from nothing, and now, because of one stupid scandal, you're just giving up? Ethan stared at her for a long moment. Then, finally, he spoke. This isn't about the scandal, Lily. Lily swallowed hard. Then why? She demanded. Ethan exhaled, rubbing his temples. Because I'm tired. Lily blinked. What? Ethan sighed. I've spent my entire life working for this, he said quietly. For what? Money? Power? He shook his head. None of it means anything. Not anymore. Lily's chest ached. Ethan had changed, and she had been so busy pushing him away that she hadn't even noticed. Ethan leaned forward, resting his arms on the desk. I need a fresh start, he murmured. Somewhere away from all this. Lily's heart clenched and away from her. She shook her head. You can't just run, she whispered. Ethan let out a soft, humorless chuckle. Says the girl who spent weeks running from her own feelings. Lily flinched. Touché. Ethan sighed again and stood up, rounding the desk. He stopped in front of her, looking down. This isn't just about the company, Lily. His voice was softer now. It's about us. Lily's throat tightened. Ethan lifted a hand, gently tucking a strand of hair behind her ear. I love you, he admitted. I don't want to be your fake fiancé, Lily. I want to be real. Lily's eyes burned with unshed tears. I love you too, she whispered. Ethan's breath hitched. Then, kiss me, she murmured. Ethan didn't need to be told twice. He cupped her face and crashed his lips against hers. And in that moment, nothing else mattered. Not the scandal, and not the company, and not the past, just them. Section 9. Lily melted into the kiss, every ounce of doubt slipping away as Ethan pulled her closer. His hands were firm but gentle, anchoring her against him as if she might disappear at any moment. The heat between them was undeniable, consuming, but there was something else beneath it, something raw. It wasn't just desire, it was relief. A desperate, aching relief that they had finally stopped running from each other. When they finally pulled apart, Ethan rested his forehead against hers, his breath coming in ragged pants. I'm not letting you go again, he whispered, his voice hoarse. Lily's heart clenched. Neither am I, she wanted to say. But before she could, the sound of Ethan's office phone ringing shattered the moment. Ethan sighed and pulled away, rubbing the back of his neck. He glanced at the caller ID, and his expression darkened. It's the board, he muttered. Lily swallowed hard. They want to confirm your resignation, she guessed. Ethan nodded. Lily hesitated. She knew this was his decision, that she had no right to tell him what to do. But still, she wasn't ready to watch him walk away from everything he had built. Not like this. Ethan let the phone ring a few more times before finally picking it up. This is Ethan, he answered. Lily watched, holding her breath as he listened to the person on the other end. His jaw clenched. No, he said firmly. I haven't changed my mind. Lily's stomach dropped. This was really happening. Ethan was leaving. She tried to tell herself that this was what he wanted, that she had no right to ask him to stay. But deep down, she couldn't shake the feeling that this was all her fault. If she had been honest from the start, if she had told him she loved him before pushing him away, would things have turned out differently? Ethan hung up and turned to face her. It's done, he said simply. Lily stared at him, and suddenly she felt like she couldn't breathe. So that's it? She asked, her voice barely above a whisper. Ethan frowned. What do you mean? Lily shook her head, trying to find the words. You're just leaving everything behind? Ethan sighed and ran a hand through his hair. I don't belong here anymore, Lily, he admitted. Lily's throat tightened. You built this company from the ground up, she reminded him. You worked your entire life for this. Ethan exhaled sharply. I built this company because I thought it was all that mattered, he said. But then I met you, and suddenly, it wasn't enough anymore. Lily swallowed hard. Ethan. He stepped closer, taking her hands in his. I don't want a life where I have to pretend I don't care about you, he murmured. I don't want to sit in boardrooms and shake hands with people who only see me as a paycheck. I want more. Lily's chest ached. But what if? She hesitated. What if you regret it? Ethan cupped her cheek, his thumb brushing over her skin. I won't, he said softly. Not as long as I have you. Lily felt the tears burning behind her eyes. She wanted to believe him, but was love enough? Before she could say anything, Ethan's assistant suddenly rushed into the office, looking frantic. Mr. Parker. She stopped abruptly when she saw Lily, her eyes widening slightly before she turned back to Ethan. You need to see this. Ethan frowned. See what? The assistant hesitated before pulling out her phone and handing it to him. Ethan took it, his expression darkening as he scrolled through whatever was on the screen. Lily's stomach churned. What is it? She asked. Ethan exhaled sharply and handed her the phone. Lily's eyes widened as she saw the headline. Breaking news, billionaire Ethan Parker's fake engagement exposed. Who is the mystery woman? Below it was a blurry picture of them kissing. Lily's heart stopped. No, not this. Ethan clenched his jaw. This is exactly what I was afraid of, he muttered. Lily's hands shook as she scrolled through the article. They're saying her voice cracked. They're saying I scammed you. Ethan's eyes darkened. What? Lily turned the phone toward him, showing him a paragraph filled with wild accusations. Sources close to Parker's inner circle claimed that the woman in question, Lily Carter, deceived the CEO into a fake engagement for financial gain. Speculation suggests that Parker's recent decision to step down may be linked to personal turmoil surrounding the scandal. Could this mysterious woman be the reason behind his shocking resignation? Lily felt sick. "This isn't true," she whispered. Ethan's expression was murderous. "Of course it's not," he snapped. "And I'm not going to let them get away with this." He turned toward his desk, already grabbing his phone to make a call. But Lily grabbed his arm. "Ethan, wait," she said urgently. Ethan frowned. "What?" Lily swallowed hard. "If you fight this, it's only going to make it worse," she said softly. Ethan's jaw clenched. "So what? I'm supposed to just let them drag your name through the mud?" Lily hesitated. She didn't want him to fight for her. She had already cost him too much. "I don't want you to ruin your career over me," she admitted. Ethan stared at her for a long moment. Then he exhaled and shook his head. "You still don't get it, do you?" he murmured. Lily frowned. "Get what?" Ethan cupped her face, his gaze intense. "This isn't just about you," he said firmly. "This is about us." Lily's breath caught. Ethan took a deep breath. "They can write whatever they want," he said. "They can spin this story 1,000 different ways, but it won't change the fact that I love you." Lily's heart clenched. Ethan brushed a strand of hair from her face, his touch lingering. "Do you trust me?" he asked. Lily swallowed hard. "Yes," she whispered. Ethan's lips curved slightly. "Then let me handle this," he said. Lily hesitated for only a second before nodding, and for the first time in years she let herself believe that maybe, just maybe, she didn't have to fight alone anymore. The next morning, Lily woke up to Ethan's name trending online. But this time, it wasn't because of a scandal. It was because of a statement. Ethan Parker had gone public. In a press conference, he had shut down every rumor, every false accusation, and every attempt to twist their story into something ugly. And in front of the entire world, he had admitted the truth. He loved her. Lily stared at the screen, her heart pounding. He had chosen her, not just in private, but in public. Tears welled in her eyes as she reached for her phone. She needed to see him. Now, Section 10. Lily barely hesitated before throwing on a jacket and rushing out the door. Her heart pounded as she navigated the streets of New York, weaving through the crowds, her mind racing with thoughts of Ethan. He had chosen her, not just in whispered promises, not just in stolen moments behind closed doors, but in front of the whole world. And she had to know, had to hear it from him one more time. By the time she arrived at Ethan's penthouse, she was breathless, her fingers trembling as she knocked on the door. It swung open almost immediately, as if he had been waiting. Ethan stood there, his shirt unbuttoned at the top, his sleeves rolled up, looking just as exhausted as she felt. But the moment he saw her, something in his expression shifted. Relief, hope, love. Neither of them spoke. Then Lily threw herself into his arms. Ethan caught her instantly, his arms wrapping around her tightly, burying his face in her hair. "You saw it?" he murmured against her temple. Lily nodded against his chest, her voice breaking. "You—" She pulled back, looking up at him with wide, teary eyes. "You really did that?" Ethan cupped her face, his thumb brushing over her cheek, his voice raw. "I meant every word." Lily's heart clenched. She had spent so many years thinking love wasn't meant for her, that no one would ever fight for her. But Ethan had, over and over again, and she knew deep down she would never forgive herself if she let him go now. A slow, tearful smile spread across her lips. "You're an idiot," she whispered. Ethan's lips twitched. "So I've been told." Lily's smile wavered, her throat tightening. "I'm scared," she admitted. Ethan's expression softened. "I know," he murmured. She exhaled shakily. "But I don't want to run anymore." Ethan brushed a strand of hair behind her ear, his gaze never leaving hers. "Then don't." Lily swallowed hard. "Okay." Ethan's breath hitched. "Okay?" Lily nodded, her voice barely above a whisper. "Okay." A slow, breathtaking smile spread across his face, and then he kissed her. Not the desperate, frantic kisses they had shared before. This one was different. It was slow, deep, and it was a promise. Lily melted into him, her fingers tangling in his hair, her heart pounding in rhythm with his. And for the first time in a long time, she felt safe, loved, home. A month later, Lily stood on a rooftop terrace, the city skyline stretching endlessly behind her. It was a warm evening, the sky painted in hues of gold and lavender, and everything felt surreal. Ethan had planned this night for weeks, refusing to tell her what he had in mind. She should have known. Ethan Parker didn't do small gestures. As she turned to face him, she saw the way his gaze softened, like she was the only thing that had ever mattered. And then, before she could even process it, Ethan dropped to one knee. Lily's breath stopped. "Ethan." He reached into his pocket, pulling out a small velvet box, his expression serious but filled with something unmistakable. "Love. I know this is fast," he admitted, his voice quiet but unwavering. "I know we've been through hell and back, but Lily," he exhaled sharply, "I don't want to spend another second of my life without you." Tears welled in Lily's eyes. Ethan took her hand, his grip warm and steady. "I don't care what the world says, I don't care what anyone thinks. I love you, and I will spend the rest of my life proving it to you, if you'll let me." Lily swallowed hard, her heart hammering so loudly she could barely hear anything else. She should be terrified, and she was terrified. But when she looked at Ethan, at the man who had fought for her, who had chosen her over everything, she realized something. She wasn't scared of him, she was scared of how much she loved him, and she wasn't going to let that fear win. With a watery smile, she whispered, "Yes." Ethan blinked. Then, as if he had just processed her answer, he let out a breathless, disbelieving laugh. "Yes?" Lily nodded, laughing through her tears. "Yes, you idiot." Ethan grinned, and then he slipped the ring onto her finger, stood and pulled her into his arms, kissing her like she was the best thing that had ever happened to him. Because to him, she was. The media went wild the next day. The headlines were everywhere. Ethan Parker engaged to the woman who stole his heart. From fake fiancé to forever. The love story no one saw coming. And for the first time, Lily didn't care. Because this time it was real. She wasn't running, she wasn't pretending. She was finally where she belonged. With the man she loved. If you enjoyed this story, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe for more heartwarming romances. What was your favorite moment? Let us know in the comments below. Stay tuned for more stories that will keep you hooked until the very last word. Till the very last word. Till the very last word. Till the